Welcome to another episode of CyberBytes, the podcast today. I'm joined by Shan Kulkarni, the CEO and co-founder at Nullify. Dude, great to have you on. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, dude. The accent, people might be able to guess. When did you fly in?
Just got in from Australia last week on Wednesday. Was here for B-Sides SF on the weekend. It was
Nice.
great.
Yeah, how was that?
Really a lot of awesome talks. Really enjoyed Clint Gibbler from SendGrab's talk about using LLMs to do a lot of things in AppSec.
Yeah.
So yeah, excited for RSA. It's my first RSA, so enjoyed to be here.
Yeah, good to have you, man. Let's kick off. Give the audience an idea of who you are and the problem that Nullify solves.
Sure. I'm one of the co-founders of Nullify, and our vision is to augment security teams, specifically application security teams, with AI.
Yeah.
Today, there's about 4 million jobs in cyber that are currently unfilled. And if you look at kind of who has the monopoly on security talent, like security engineering talent, you'll find that most mid-market enterprise companies can't build AppSec capabilities because of that kind of monopoly. So I used to lecture security engineering at the University of New South Wales in Australia, and a lot of the best of my students, went to like Google, Canva, or Atlassian. Here, obviously, it's like Netflix and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if you're a company looking to scale AppSec, it's really, really hard to do that without good people. So with Nullify, we're building and training AI agents that can reason about application security tasks autonomously.
Yeah.
So that way, the kind of limiting reagent for doing AppSec is no longer talent.
Yeah.
And we're kind of trying to democratize access to world-class security engineering talent through AI.
Love it. In this episode, we'll go deeper into AI because it's a buzzword this week.
Absolutely.
Everyone's talking about it. But before we do, let's rewind, because you've got an interesting journey. First-time founder, right?
Yes.
An engineer beforehand. Can you just give the audience an idea of your journey? So from your engineering days to being a founder.
Yeah, absolutely. I started off my career at Cisco as a software engineer. I was based in Sydney, but my team was all here in San Jose. Really enjoyed building, software that builds other software. So like a lot of infrastructure and developer tooling stuff.
Yeah.
Where I got really interested in security was doing some vulnerability research things at UNSW in Australia. So I was really enjoying breaking software, writing exploits, doing a lot of like binary disassemblies and that sort of thing. But what I found was like securing software isn't something that's taught as part of like software engineering programs. So when we started working really closely with AWS to like teach students about cloud security, almost turned into running like a cloud security incubator. We'd get students to work on novel cloud security problems, and we'd get them to present it back at like a sort of demo day every 10 weeks. So got the students to work on some novel ideas, and then after that, I was then working at an AWS partner, helping enterprises build more securely on the cloud.
Great.
Mainly in container security. So I spoke at like Cloud Security Conference in 2022, had a lot of fun. And whenever I talk to enterprises about, application security, I'd say the same thing. They have 100 or sometimes 1,000 software engineers for every one security engineer, really struggling to scale. And from my time working with companies like Cisco and Amazon, like especially Amazon, I know the way they solve this problem is this thing called the Security Guardians program, where they literally embed security engineers into every developer team.
Okay.
But unless you're Amazon, coming back to that talent piece, it's really hard to capture that sort of security engineering talent. So at the end of 2022, I said, to my mates, why don't we build something that feels like a real AppSec engineer? And that's kind of how Nullify came to be.
Yeah, I love it. It's a cool story. And first time CEO, co-founder, how's that been?
A quick one here from Oliver, one of the co-founders of Asperon Search. Our CyberBytes podcast showcases the security ecosystem's most exciting companies, but we do much more. Our talent solutions give security vendors the competitive advantage by building high-performing go-to-market and technical teams globally. If you're looking for your next role or need to hire the best talent in this competitive market, then reach out to us directly via our info@email in the show notes. Let's get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, people always say, as a CEO, you're like the first to open the doors and the first to like sweep up at night. That's definitely true. I wouldn't say it's as glamorous as like people have made it out to be, but no, it's a really exciting and really awesome journey. Coming out here after we raised that pre-seed, came out here 9 months later to raise our seed from some really awesome investors like Eli Can from the VP at Central One, Two Sigma Ventures, and the journey kind of taking your idea into a product and the product into like a company. It's been really humbling, so really enjoying it.
Yeah, I love it, dude. What surprised you the most, do you reckon, about being a founder?
I think it's if you're working a day job, like sometimes you feel like if I don't do something, someone else would do it.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think the thing that surprised me the most was that if you don't do something yourself as a founder, like the buck really stops with you. Like no one else is going to do it because it's your company, it's your baby. So yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast. It was an engineer, and he was saying that it's like the best holiday he's ever had, working for a big tech.
Yeah.
Because he's just like cruising.
Exactly.
And then he started a startup, and he's like, okay, reality is actually here.
Yeah.
So as you say, the buck that you made, it's on you, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. So Nullify. So seed funded. You mentioned a couple of investors there. Tell everyone a bit more about your plans from a future looking perspective. So combining AI application security. Well, actually start there. Like what does the product actually do, and how are you helping folks?
Yeah, absolutely. So like when companies are starting to mature their AppSec, they got to buy a lot of different tools to do all this automated testing, and then they have to buy probably a couple more tools to help them prioritize all these vulnerabilities and contextualize them and understand risk. And now there's a new class or category of products that they have to buy to help them remediate vulnerabilities. So Nullify is essentially trying to do all of that in one. So whatever security engineers do manually, they have to look at a vulnerability, they have to see if, which endpoints is it connected to, which workloads is it in. They have to triage it manually, then they have to figure out how to fix it. We're trying to augment that whole workflow with these AI agents that are able to reason about the context in your environment, the data that's in it, and essentially automate 20 to 40% of what your AppSec engineers are doing today.
Right.
And forward looking, if we think about what that means for the kind of security operating model, I would love to see a world where if automating what a lot of security engineers are doing today, in 3 to 4 years time, what else could they be doing instead? What more higher leverage work could they be focusing on? Because every time we talk to security teams, especially these kind of under-resourced, overutilized AppSec teams, they're just trawling through vulnerability scan findings. They're trying to enable developers. They have to fix things. They don't have the support and the tools they need to really make an AppSec program efficient. And so with Nullify, we started off with things like fixing vulnerabilities in code, something large language models are exceptional at. Then we were well, we can also use LLMs to explain vulnerabilities to developers like a real AppSec engineer would. And now we just kept moving up the value chain and just saying, well, why not just take as much of the reasoning of a human AppSec engineer and put it in a box, and see how that can help teams get to AppSec maturity faster with less.
Great. Yeah, and so AI being a buzzword, right? Everyone's talking about it this week. There's probably concerns. So you're leveraging LLMs and AI. So what concerns do you have to look at from your own product perspective? How does that work?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think today what enterprises want to see the most is how you're handling their data.
Okay.
As well as are you learning or training from any of their sensitive intellectual property? So those are the kind of objections we're met with the most.
Yeah.
I do think what I found interesting and surprising, cyber is usually a community that's very skeptical and naturally so. But it's kind of refreshing to see that most of the security community is almost accepting that a solution or an acceptable solution to the cyber skill shortage is humans working with AI to do more in security. That's the kind of future of the cyber workforce. So people are a lot more open to adopting AI in cyber than I initially thought. But yeah, I'd say risk-wise, it's definitely something that everyone's trying to measure and understand better. And we're trying to help our customers on that journey and show them how we handle their data, where their data goes, how our models train on them or don't train on them, and give them those assurances they need to adopt Nullify.
Because it's still an educational piece, isn't it? Because no one really knows how it's going to plan out. But I agree that I feel like people are more receptive to leveraging AI in certain aspects, and we have to, right? Because attackers are leveraging it in every way they can, right? So we've got to be utilizing it within the space to be able to protect ourselves.
That's it. It's an arms race. I think it was the NSA or somebody said that they're starting to use AI in their cyber defense ops as well. A lot of these intelligence agencies, but a lot of these large orchestrated, state actors, those attacks are being augmented by AI to like generate malicious payloads,
Yeah.
do things like recon and discovery quicker. So absolutely, like I think we should balance the scales and give blue teams the context and tools that they need to kind of keep up with the maturity and pace of those attacks.
Yeah.
So I think the short-term advantage might go to attackers who can use AI to like
Yeah.
kind of, exploit like an attack surface faster.
Yeah.
But over time, hopefully, with Nullify, like the blue team will then get the advantage because they can understand their environment better with AI.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And with Nullify then, so what's on the horizon? I don't know how much you can share, but what's maybe future looking for you guys this year? Anything in the plans that you can share that's exciting? I know there's a move potentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us what you can share about Nullify in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be launching at New York Tech Week in June.
Great.
So if you're a security practitioner or a security leader, we're going to be having 3 events during New York Tech Week.
Yeah.
A great CISO panel, a launch party. We're also going to be launching on the 5th of June on the NASDAQ billboard in Times Square.
Cool.
Really like to make a splash and show everybody that we can really build world-class enterprise software companies from this little country called Australia. We did it before with Atlassian, but we also want to build a lot of security community on the East Coast. So we're going to be starting a dinner series for security leaders, which we're also starting here. And we're also starting the SF Cloud Native Security Meetup with our first one in 2 weeks' time, actually.
Very cool.
I'll also be speaking at the OWASP Bay Area chapter meetup later this month. So if you're looking to hear more about what we're building, follow us on LinkedIn. You'll see like a million events.
Yeah. I think maybe you'll be able to correct me on this or tell me if I'm wrong, but I think OWASP added an AI like essentially vulnerability recently. Which is pretty cool. So because there's a few companies in the States that are looking around like protection of AI.
Correct.
Stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's an interesting space. Like I've been seeing a lot on it. I think there's like a running joke now about, everyone's trying to do like security, like securing AI, securing LLMs.
Yeah.
Me personally, I think it's going to be more about, that category is going to be more about securing the data stack around LLM applications.
Yeah.
I think OpenAI must spend hundreds and millions of dollars red teaming their own models. So I'm not sure if that's something like a startup is going to solve. But I do think like the push for caring more about where your data is going, and building out that data security around the LLM stack makes a lot of sense. And I think I saw the OWASP top 10 for LLM risks like prompt injection and that sort of thing. Yeah.
And how does with the AppSec space, because when you define your guys as AppSec,
absolutely,
how do you see that planning out over the next couple of years with AI coming in? Do you think that's like the next kind of like big thing or hurdle for AppSec?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, like, one of the biggest moments in AppSec for me, I thought this year was, when the Apple Vision Pro came out, right? Like everybody was tweeting about it.
Yeah.
Couldn't go anywhere without seeing people walking around with it. But what I saw was like a critical CVE. Somebody managed to brick their Pro with like a memory kernel, like a memory corruption vulnerability. So as we start to move towards like more physical systems, right? Whether it's like driverless cars or like the humane pin or whatever it might be, I think people are going to care more and more about product security. Now, what that means is like a lot of what's been like traditional AppSec at the web app layer, I think they're going to have a need to like get AI to like automate a lot of that, so they can focus on more like higher leverage AppSec work, like logic-based flaws, more like even like hardware vulnerabilities. I think those things are going to take up more of the ProdSec capability. And so that's where I think something like Nullify can help shape the future of AppSec. Because if you have a co-pilot with you that's like doing a lot of the scut work around, is this SAST finding a false positive? Like, is this SCA vulnerability reachable by the public internet? The orchestration around remediating it. Hey, Nullify, I got 10 hours of sprint to fix vulnerabilities. Can you like open up a ticket in Jira, open a pull request, message me on Slack when it's done? If we can do a lot of the scut work around operating an AppSec program, I think security teams will be freed up to focus on that really high leverage AppSec work, which is I think where they want to go in this future of like physical security as well.
Yeah, interesting. And what are you seeing, like, when you're speaking to CISOs, application security team? What are you seeing are the main challenges at the moment from like an AppSec perspective? You mentioned the talent shortage. Like, unless you're fortunate enough to have endless resource and actually have a team, right, it's very difficult for smaller firms to be able to have actual coverage and security. Like, other than that, are you seeing any other challenges that they're facing?
I'd definitely say it's around like vulnerability management. All the heads of security I've talked to, even just this last week or so, they're all saying the same thing. It's just like, we got all these vulnerability findings. We don't have that many people in the security team to trawl through them. What do we focus on? Where are our most important risks? And like, how do we prioritize them? So like, that's one really big piece of the puzzle they're struggling to solve. And then on the remediation side, like going in and fixing it, everyone has SLAs that they have to meet. Understanding like, which vulnerabilities are approaching SLA, like which ones do we have to like put more remediation effort in. They're really struggling to answer these questions, but the tools that they're having now are just kind of creating more security work for them. And that security work that they're not supported to action, given the kind of talent shortage. So whenever we talk to security teams, the thing we hear a lot is we have this one person in security whose whole job is to just look at this dashboard and triage findings. And I'm not sure if that's a great use of the security budget. I'm sure the CISO and the security leader would agree. Like, they would much rather a security team doing more kind of high leverage work. And so, what's the crux of like Nullify? Would you say it augments against the security team? So it's just helping them essentially do both pieces, by the sound of it, the vulnerability piece, but also then the remediation of that as well. Is that it does both parts? Absolutely. It'll go in and find a bunch of vulnerabilities. It'll discover your environment. It'll map endpoints to repositories to teams. So then if you want to kind of visualize or explore, like, hey, Nullify, which of my developers are pushing the most secrets, or which teams are pushing the most vulnerabilities. Then you can start an investigation around specific vulnerabilities and say, okay, like this cross-site scripting, is this really an issue? Who pushed it? And then if you deem that you want to fix it, Nullify, can you please open a pull request to fix it? For that, we fine-tuned really good coding LLM, code family-based models specifically for secure code generation. Dr. Hammond Pierce is one of the leading researchers in using LLMs to fix vulnerabilities. He wrote the initial paper on GitHub Copilot generating them and spoke about it at Black Hat. He's one of our research collaborators. So commercializing some of his research to fix vulnerabilities has been really exciting. But the triage and investigations Copilot is definitely where we see the security engineers being augmented the most. And then on the remediation side, I think that's more for the developers to kind of just short circuit that hard part of like how do I fix this, going back and forth with the security team, getting a fix in fast and in production so they can go back to building software.
Nice. And what advice would you give now you've kind of experienced the CEO vibe, the co-founder? What advice, someone like you, engineer, maybe having thoughts around, okay, I want to do my own thing, don't really know how, maybe. What advice would you give it to that sort of person?
It's a good question. I think, like, on the product side, like, it's really important to understand, listen to your customers, right? Obviously, listen to them and hear what they have to say about what they want. But also, like, you should also be very opinionated on the solution to their problem. Like, I think somebody once told me, actually, it was one of my co-founders, Tony. He told me, like, it's up to us to ask the customers what their problems are. We ask the customers what their problems are, but it's up to us to come up with a solution. So, like, you should walk that fine line of, like, some people just hear what customers say and then they go and build that, but maybe it's not something the customer would pay for. So I think, like, product strategy, especially in cyber, it's really important to figure out what to build and, like, what is it that people are actually going to pay for and solves a really big pain point for them. So that's kind of the advice I'd give.
Because, like, with the amount of vendors, like, I think we track like 1,000 in the US.
It's a lot.
It's just so many, dude. You've got to find that, like, product market fit, as you say.
Absolutely.
Cool. Right, before we wrap this up then, great having you on the show, dude. Appreciate
Likewise,
it. Is there anything that you'd like to share additionally with the audience, plugs, anything like that? How can they find you if they want to reach out?
I think, as I said, like, please follow us. We're at nullify.ai. If you're at New York Tech Week from the 3rd of June to the 8th of June, we're doing a bunch of great events, and we're also starting that dinner series here in the Bay Area. So if you're a security and engineering leader, you want to get together with some of your peers or colleagues and talk more about what the future of the cyber workforce looks like, please reach out to myself and the team.
And when does that start, the security leaders?
First one is at the end of the month on the 30th of May.
Cool. And that's exclusively for security folks, leaders?
That's correct. We're hosting that with Root Ventures, one of our seed stage investors, and then with 2 Sigma Ventures as well.
Great. Awesome. All right, dude, it's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me. Dude. Thanks
Appreciate it.
If you are still listening, thanks for hanging in there, and I hope you enjoyed this special RSA episode. If you did, then please hit the like and subscribe button, and of course, share this with your colleagues and friends. If you are a candidate looking for your next role within cybersecurity, or a hiring manager looking to build out your technical or go-to-market teams, then please reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or via email. See you soon.